If you want to start a creative business, but you don't have time, check this out. So you're here because you want to start a creative business, but maybe you're already working a 9 to 5, you have a family, you have this, that, and the other going on, and it seems like you just don't have enough time to make it work. I understand that. I feel that. And in this video, I want to address that concern. I want to show you ways that you can make more time in your day and ways that you can make better use of the 24 hours that you are given each day. Now, this is not like a scheduling, productivity, time hacking, blocking. No, it's none of that. This is just very overarching, broad concepts that you can apply in your life in whatever specific way you see fit. So that being said, let's get into it. I'm going to hit you with, first, a couple ways to make more time. Second, a couple ways to better utilize your time. And listen, I don't use schedules. I don't use anything. It's none of that. And then finally, I am going to address the work-life balance. When it comes to time, how I've been able to achieve that, and maybe a mindset that might help you achieve it. The very first thing is this. If you think you don't have enough free time in your day, in your week to start a business, open your phone, look at your phone. How much screen time did you have last week? That is exactly how much time you have to work on your business. And I'm going to say this. I was a smartphone man for 10 years. I get it, okay? But I got a feeling years and years ago, this is a distraction. This isn't helping me achieve the goals I most want. And after sitting on the idea for a year or more, I finally pulled the trigger. I ditched the smartphone, and now I use this. It's called the Light Phone 2. It calls, it texts, it does the minimal notes, alarms, and my screen time is next to zero, 5 minutes a day. And you might be thinking, yeah, but I need this and that app and this and that for work. And that's true. Some people do need a smartphone for work. And in that situation, I would say use your smartphone at work and leave it in the office. You can take out the SIM card. When you're out of the office, you're using that. And it will be weird at first for a month or so, but your distractions will be zero. And this is the other concern. You might be thinking, yeah, well, my screen time isn't actually my free time, because sometimes I'm just waiting in line, so I'll watch a YouTube video. And I'm going to say this. Once you ditch the smartphone, you are forced to entertain yourself with your own thoughts in a boring situation, right? If you're in a weird elevator, what do? You get on your phone. When I'm in a weird elevator, what do? I just start thinking about my business, typeface design. That's my default when I'm in a boring situation now, is think on creativity or think on business. Just things that I enjoy thinking about now just are readily brought to my mind, and I can spend 5 minutes thinking about, maybe this typeface that I'm designing, maybe there's, I'm having this problem, and I'm just going through my mind and thinking how I might resolve that. So even though I'm, in an elevator and it's awkward, not to me, because I'm in my own head thinking about my craft. I never did that when I had a smartphone. And here's the other beautiful thing about that is maybe most people have a smartphone. And most people don't own their own business. And maybe there's a reason. 99% of people aren't willing to give up something that they see as so integral. But that's a good way to get ahead of 99% of people. And just on a broad level, maybe this is the hard truth you need to hear. If you want to start a creative business, but you're not willing to give up your phone to do it, you want your phone more than you want to start a business. So stop complaining about not having a business. You have your phone that you like more than your business anyways. And at that point, you just want to have it all. No sacrifice, all bonus, all plus. And despite what they say at the Academy speeches sometimes, most times, you just can't have it all. Me personally, I couldn't have it all. And I'm fine with that. Because I sacrificed something I honestly didn't really want or need as much as something that I really wanted and really felt like I needed. Ditch the phone, start the business. You'll be shocked. Number 2, I've been in this situation exactly. It's not that I don't have enough time, it's that I don't have enough energy. If you're feeling tired at the end of the day, this, that, the other, you just want to unwind. It's been a long day at work and I just need to unwind. I get that. I've been there. It's not really an issue in that sense of time, but energy. If you're spending an hour at the end of each day, watching your programs or scrolling through the social media, just something to unwind, if you will, it's probably just because you don't have enough energy to get through the day working. And I am not about rise and grind, work. You should sleep when you're dead and you have to hustle culture. That's not me. What I'm about is I want my days to be full of energy so that I can act how I would like to act without friction. For me, I took 2024 a step back from work, and I decided I would focus more on my health. Make sure I get enough sleep, make sure I eat well, make sure I exercise. And the amount of energy that I have is night and day. I can sustain work for so much longer and not feel exhausted. I don't feel like I need to unwind and cool down at the end of each day. I have energy through the day. I'm tired when it's time to sleep. I sleep until my body wakes up. I eat healthy. I'm going to try to. I exercise often. And the amount of energy I have from that, I might not have as much more time from doing those things, but I am able to maximize the time that I do have. If you eat right, your mind will be sharp. Ideas will come faster. If you exercise, your body will have more energy. You can work for longer without feeling exhausted and fatigued. And of course, cannot stress the importance of enough sleep. Now, if you're thinking what does this have to do with business and I don't have time for, I understand that. I'll address that more at the end of the video. But for now, just know that you might not be able to always constantly exercise, eat right, get enough sleep. You might need to sacrifice one for the other for a season. But again, I'll get to that in the end of the video when we talk more about work-life balance. The third thing, once you've ditched the phone, once you've eaten healthy, is passion. And this kind of feeds into 1 or 2. Perhaps this should have been first, is, I will say it 1,000 times, passion is so important. Because here I can tell you, ditch your phone. I can tell you, eat healthy so you have more energy. But you are not going to do those things unless you have something worth sacrificing your phone for. Something worth sacrificing the junk food and the laziness and the bad sleep for. You need something that is so important to you that it is very obvious you will sacrifice things that get in the way of accomplishing that goal. So the question that begs to be asked is how do you find your passion? For me, in my life, what I have found is that saying yes to opportunities that both make sense in your mind and feel good in your heart is a great way to find your passion. A weird example, but I'm going to tell you this, is towards the end of my college career, I was very, very worried about getting a job. How am I going to make a living? I was very worried about making a living by the end of my undergrad. And the last year of my undergrad, I just felt like I wanted to make music. I'd studied graphic design for 4 years in my undergrad. It would make sense to put my energy into graphic design because I need to get a career. It's coming up soon, the end of school. But I was like, no, it makes sense in my mind for whatever reason. And it feels good in my heart that I should start making music. Right? Now I'm going to say this. I did not make good music, but I made music. And it got to a point where I made a music video. If you're interested in watching that music video, it's called Worst Rapper Alive from Pizza Water. But I digress. I made the video, and I just put it out as like a weird school assignment. I found a way to work my music into it. And didn't think anything of it. I just knew that it's what I wanted to do. I put it out. And wouldn't you know, something very bizarre happened. Somebody saw that music video, a one Daryl Eves, and he said, this kid has personality. He probably said the music was terrible, but yeah, I had personality, and I knew how to use a camera. So this Daryl Eves, if you don't know him, he's a YouTube guru type of man, and he hired me to edit videos for him, do design for him, because he saw this music video that I made that had nothing to do with anything else in my life, but it was something I felt passionate about, and I did. And it led to a weird opportunity of working with Daryl Eves. He taught me a lot about business, about YouTube, about storytelling. So much of the mindset that I have comes from the couple months that I spent working with him. And that came from me at the end of my college career thinking, I just want to do music. And it led to this, that, and the other. And eventually it led to where I am now, which I think is a very good place. As a caveat, if you don't want to be a good person and, you think your head and your heart is connecting and telling you to do some bad things, you probably need to reevaluate your situation. I feel like that goes without saying, but just to make sure, don't just act on every whim you have. You have to have a strong goal that never changes of being a good person, doing good things, being kind and generous and this and that, providing a living for your family, creating beautiful art, whatever it is. If that is always your gaze, when your head and your heart connect on an idea, follow the idea and it will lead you who knows where, great places. And one more note on passion, it will develop and strengthen over time. So I'd always kind of been curious about making typefaces, so I started making them. And as I learned more and more about them and made them more and more, I became more passionate about the craft of typeface design. And nowadays, that's what I would do for fun if money was no object. I literally dream of designing fonts. My dreams are me sitting in front of my computer, designing fonts, drawing letters, figuring out new features for fonts and typefaces. And so when I wake up, I'm excited to design a font. At the end of a hard day, if I have to do stuff I don't like, I refresh myself and I get more energy when I can sit down and design fonts. I'm not that worried about catching up with this TV show or that TV show. To me, that does not sound as fun 90% of the time as designing fonts. So if you want to start a creative business, it's not the easiest thing to do. It takes passion. But with passion, it is the easiest, most natural thing to do to master your craft. And mastering your craft is, in my opinion, the most important part of a sustainable creative business. And that brings me to the next point, is if you can develop a skill set, you will create for yourself more time. We're about to get like pie in the sky, really up in the air, high level conceptual stuff. But stick with me. I'm going to start with an example that will hopefully help to make this concrete, and then I'll hit you with the up in the sky stuff. So let's pretend somebody comes to me and they say, Harbor, I want a typeface. It's a very simple typeface. It's, A through Z, capital letters. That's it. If I have no skills in type design, it's probably going to take me a couple months to create that because I have no idea what I'm doing. I have zero skills in type design. And because it's such a simple typeface, they say, okay, I'll pay you whatever, $1,000 to do it. And it's going to take me 2 months and I'm going to make $1,000. Cool. Not a great deal. This is a situation I have ran into years and years ago when I did not have very much type design skills. So fast forward, now we're in 2024, maybe somebody comes to me hypothetically and says, Harbor, we want you to design a typeface. It's very robust. It's, covers 120 languages. It has 50 different styles. And because it's such a big job, such a big typeface, we will pay you $100,000 to do it. Okay, now, let's say I spent the past 5-6 years, I devoted a lot of time to developing the skill of typeface design. So now this big job is only going to take me the same 2 months that small job took me 5-6 years ago. So, all of a sudden, for a 2-month period, I get paid $100,000 as opposed to $1,000. Now, suddenly, I have all the time in the world. I could work 2 months and take the rest of the 10 months off and be totally financially fine because I spent the last 6 years developing a skill set. Suddenly, my time is wide open. Time is the most valuable resource you have. Now, you could say, what about money? What about the skills you mentioned? And I will say this, the only way to make money or the only way to develop skills is by putting in time. Now, you might say, well, what if you inherit all the money? Well, somebody put in the time to develop the skill to make that money, your father or your mother, and then when they died, they gave it to you, right? Maybe you personally didn't turn that time into money, but someone did, and you have benefited from that. So you can turn time into essentially anything. It is an absolutely crazy concept, and it is so valuable. If you had a gold brick, or a magic bean that you could turn into anything, imagine how much you would value that bean. And that is your time. Value your time. If you spend an hour learning a skill, you will always have that hour available to you to recall and use, right? If you spend an hour distracted on your phone watching a show, it's not an hour you will ever get back. You will never be able to hold on to and use that hour, if that makes sense. Because I spent years and years in this example, in this story, developing the skill of typeface design. I spent 6 years developing this skill. Now, on year 7, somebody might come to me with that project that takes 2 months and pays $100,000, and I suddenly have 10 free months I've unlocked. And maybe somebody a couple months later comes to me with the same project, and I still have that skill set, so I can unlock, maybe another year where I don't need to worry and waste time making money. I cannot stress this enough. Time is a magical bean that you can literally turn into anything. Value your time and spend your time developing a skill set, any skill set that people are willing to pay for, and you will unlock your future time in such an amazing way. And that concept brings me to this. In 2024, this was my schedule. The first part of the year until about April, I worked a somewhat normal schedule, 6 hours, 8 hours. I took a lot of time off because I own my own business, but it was essentially a normal working schedule. And then around May, June, my wife was very pregnant, so we're going to have a kid coming soon. I decided to scale back and not work as much. For those 2 months, I worked about 4 hours. Then my kid was born in June, and in July and August, those 2 months combined, I worked maybe 10 hours total. And then beyond that, July, August, September, October, November, December, the last 4, however many months, I was working 4-hour work days. So essentially, 2024, I was working 4-hour work days. I took 2 months off entirely, and I made a great living. It was the most money I'd ever made in a year. I mean, you might say to yourself, beautiful work-life balance. I'm jealous. I want that. And don't we all? But here's the thing. It ties back into the skills, and it ties back into this. Work-life balance is for people who either don't want to start a business or a side hustle, or have a successful business. It's not for people who are starting and building a business. When I started my business, I was working a job, I was working a second job, I was planning a wedding, and I was starting my business. My health, I wasn't prioritizing exercise or diet or much sleep. I was not following the advice I gave in the prior section of this video. But I did recognize that it was a season. An even more extreme version of this is when I was in grad school. This was my late 20s. It was a very intense program when I was in. It was the School of Visual Arts. The program was Masters in Art and Design. And I kept track of the hours that I worked each week, spent working on design and in class, and I regularly spent over 100 hours a week working. I would often work all day, work through the night, and work all day the next day until midnight, where I would fall asleep and then wake up at 6 a.m. and do it all over again. That was for my first semester. It's what it looked like. And by the end of that first semester, I will tell you this. When I would walk up the stairs from the subway to the street, my gums would start buzzing, kind of go a little numb. I'd get dizzy. I'd get lightheaded, just doing some stairs. Okay? Very unsustainable, but it worked for a season. Because before that, and most of my life, when I wasn't trying to start a business, this and that, whatever, I was in a season of maintenance where I was exercising, eating healthy, getting enough sleep. I had a baseline of good health. So when I can totally neglect it for 3 months and not die in order to develop a skill set, this design skill set, it worked, but I understood it was just for a season. So when it comes to work-life balance, time, I do believe that it is definitely something that is earned. In the case of I want my own business so I can have more free time, it's not going to be the case for a lot of years, but then it will be. If you find yourself in this position, you want to start a creative business, but you feel like you have no free time, ditch your phone, eat healthy, exercise, get enough sleep, become passionate. Understand that skills will unlock more free time for you, and that you might need to live your life in seasons of no balance, all work, so that in the future you might have more balance, more free time. If you're not willing to do those things, I would say stop complaining about not having free time in order to start your business and find happiness in the life you currently have. Otherwise, change your life. That's a good way to go about it. That's the only way I know how to go about it. And that's that. Catch you in the next.